Hello, my name is Alexis Coleman, and I am a candidate for the Masters of Instructional Technology. I'd like to highlight a few things for you from my e-portfolio. Some backgrounds about me. I'm from Chicago, but I've spent most of my adult life on the East Coast. I graduated from Montclair State University in Montclair, New Jersey. I live in beautiful Northwest New Jersey on a lake, and I'm married, and we have a beautiful mutt called Rhodey. I've taught at the same public middle school for 14 years. 11 of those have been as a creative writing teacher. I love my job. It's so much fun to go to. Middle school students are a special group, and I find it exciting to experience such a creative subject. If we take a look at my uh, goals, personally, I want to better myself as a creative writer, take some classes. I read so many great things from my students, but I know that um, I will get inspiration for the classroom by taking a class on my own. I also want to help my students express themselves visually by continuing to develop the film club that I established about 3 years ago at the middle school. In the tech philosophy section, you'll find writing which reflects my approach to teaching in general, more so than technology specific, because my teaching experience has been solely in language arts and mostly in creative writing, which is an elective that meets 42 minutes every other day. Technology has not been our main focus, and lack of time is also an issue for us. But the past few years have been really informative to my overall experience with instructional technology since we went to full time Chromebook use about at the same time I started this master's program. So I've really been able to combine what I'm learning at Fort Hays State with what I'm doing in the classroom. And I feel like I'm just beginning to scratch the surface on how I can use technology to transform my students' experiences. My professional development plan. Uh, it reflects the fact that I've always been concerned about my students' social emotional growth. I try to educate my students in as whole way as possible, because it's important to me that my students leave my classroom being better and more well developed humans as well as leaving as better writers. I designed my PDP with that in mind. How can I use technology to also help improve my students' social emotional growth? In my face to face video section, you'll see me teaching lessons mostly focused on helping my students learn some fundamentals. Thanks to free recording software like Screencastify, it saved me time and effort. I've already recorded tutorials on how to do some basic skills. So all I need to do is direct my students to those videos so they can learn and relearn on their own time. I teach it once, and since it's recorded, it's always available to my students. In my professional presentations, you will find me discussing lessons with a lot more depth. Um, there are some really good articles in the summary section, some good discussions. In one summary, I discuss an article which suggests some ways we can use technology to actually help strengthen our unfortunate lessening connection to nature. For example, using Pokemon Go, where you have to have technology in conjunction with nature. In another piece, I discuss something else that's being lost when we spend time with technology versus spending time with other people, which is the weakening of our listening skills. Students have to be taught that it's important to remain open to simply being in the presence of another person and hearing their stories. I tell my students all the time that conversation is a skill, but it's also an art. And to this end, I've started using StoryCorps, which is an online storytelling archive. You'll find links to supplementary material that I designed to use with StoryCorps in the classroom under the extra resources section. And if you look around this section, you'll see examples of how I've tried to use technology to help my students become better storytellers, as well as helping them improve their storytelling skills. Uh, for example, you will see some videos I made that helps them learn WeVideo, for example, which is a free online resource that makes creating movies exceedingly simple. I also included a lesson using Powtoon, which is another good free tool for storytelling. You'll also find some past papers and discussions that I worked on in previous master's classes. Um, Personally, I loved being asked to dig deeply into an issue and do research, and then have the opportunity to share thoughts with my peers. I learned so much from hearing other people's points of view, and it felt really good to be able to share my own. I appreciated this theoretical and academic approach to the master's program as much as I did having to learn how to use programs and then design lessons around them. I really felt like it was a full experience. It's a long read, but my favorite paper is this one that I did on internet censorship. Having to do such papers and have such discussions really helped develop my critical thinking skills. We didn't have a lot of resources available at our fingertips when I started teaching. Certainly, things have changed, as have I, as have my students. I'm doing things now almost 15 years later that I wouldn't have dreamed of before. To begin with, our district has had a one on one Chromebook initiative for the past few years, 3 years, which is super helpful now that physical school is on hold and we're suddenly remote learning. I've moved well beyond teaching my students how to cut and paste. The growth of technology has required my profession as a whole to go beyond the basics. And I believe that thanks to this master's study at Fort Hays State, I really am forward thinking and world ready. And thank you for your time. I really enjoyed the program. I'm going to be a little bit sad to say goodbye to it, but I just thank you for everything.